Right, good morning everyone and welcome to day 2 of Insight Live Public Sector, and welcome to today's webinar, Sustaining an Agile Approach to Platform Development at the Scottish Government. And I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Hugh Wallace, Transformation Lead at the Scottish Government, and Richard Edwin, Principal Consultant at ScotLogic. Now, if you have a question for Hugh or Richard, get them into the Q&A box as we go through the webinar, and we'll take as many as we can at the end. And at the end of the webinar, I will be asking you to complete a very quick 1-minute survey, but I'll give you some more information about that a bit later on. So without any further ado, let me pass you over to Hugh.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Claire. So my name's Hugh Wallace, as Claire said, and I'm going to talk today about Scottish Government's development of a payments platform. As it says on the title of the presentation, I'm hoping, alongside Richard, to provide you with some insights into how we've tackled platform development within Scottish Government, and talk about what the key drivers are behind it, how payments relates to other strategic platform developments, and to share some of the things that have and haven't worked along the way. So I'll talk more about the programmatic approach from Scottish Government's perspective, and Richard is going to give you some practical insights into the development process, and we'll have some overlaps along the way. Firstly, though, why platforms? Well, the payments platform is one of a number of common platform developments happening right now within Scottish Government. That's alongside projects like our digital identity and cloud programmes. Platforms are one of the key deliverables in the previous digital strategy for Scotland, and will form a significant part of the refresh strategy when it's published this spring. There are lots of reasons why a platform-based strategy is integral to a modern, nimble government, whether that's down to things like avoiding duplication of people, processes, and technology, and ultimately saving taxpayers' money, or it's about consistency in terms of user experience or having a common set of tools, or whether it's areas like security, where maintaining control over standards, how things are implemented, how things are monitored are really critical issues. So centralised, user-centred common platforms are one of the cornerstones for delivering an efficient, scalable set of services within government. In terms of the payments platform itself, we started the project right at the end of 2018, so we've been going for just over 2 years. And it first came about because various projects that had come before had identified that how payments are made and received and the processes around it was an area ripe for transformation. If you pan out and think about the main functions of government, paying money out and taking money in are pretty high up there in terms of common processes. Over the last 2 years, we've taken an agile approach to both our technical delivery, but also in how we've developed a business case to set about changing the way in which Scottish Government and the wider public sector up here have dealt with payments. Since we started, we've completed a discovery phase where we took a view across the public sector landscape of the way in which payments are processed. And we also took the unusual step to build a technical proof of concept, which I'll come back to in a couple of slides. This was followed by an alpha phase where we designed and developed a more fully formed prototype to demonstrate how a platform could fulfill a number of user needs from 3 different organisations making bulk outbound payments. We concluded that phase the week before lockdown 1 was upon us last year. So as well as adjusting to a few changes in how we were working, and in the intervening period, we completed a business case, completed some necessary assurance processes, and undertook a procurement exercise, which has led us into the beta phase where we are now. So that commenced in October last year and is due to last 2 years, which will span a private to public beta, where we'll be making real payments to citizens on behalf of a small set of organisations. And we'll be working in close partnership with Scott Logic as we do that. Before launching into specifics around the platform development, it's worth stepping back a bit to look at some of the building blocks that have formed a critical part of our journey to date. As I've mentioned, having a digital strategy that has platform development as one of its key deliverables meant we had a very strong foundation to the project. But just as fundamental in terms of solid footing has been the embracing of two specific areas. Firstly, the Scottish approach to service design is really our foundation for taking a user-centred approach to the creation of any service and ensuring that people are actively part of the design and delivery of that service. There are 7 principles within the approach, which I'm not going to go into today, but these are things we've tried to embrace from the outset when we've been developing payments. And a strong user-centred cohort has been a consistent part of our team. Coupled with that is the Digital Scotland Service Standard. So this takes its roots from the gov.uk service standard, but has evolved to ensure that any Scottish central government sector organisation who's delivering a service is checking that it meets the needs of users, that it's sustainable and continually improving, and that the right technology choices are being made to underpin delivery. It's probably slightly odd to big up an assurance process, but the service standard requires any project to go through an assessment at the end of each agile phase. And this can be a lot of work for teams to go through on top of actually delivering the service. But at its heart, the service standard is all about making the right choices and considering and implementing these at the right point in delivery. So as well as reaffirming the user-centred approach, it's helped us to prioritise cloud, data standards, and consider security first and foremost in our design. I guess the value add here is that we're leaning into established best practice and trying as much as possible not to cut corners, although COVID has certainly made this quite challenging. But using these tools, these frameworks, helps drive the shape of the overall approach and prompt particular behaviours and actions. So how did we get here? Well, there are 4 key themes I want to draw out on this slide. We started small. So we were a team of just 4 people in the first instance, which meant we had to make key prioritization decisions at an early stage as a lean resource with a big remit. I think one of the big advantages here is that we've kept a tight overview of the product and technical direction and the user focus, but understood where we've needed to bring in additional resource when it's come to actual delivery. Getting the right people and skills in place can be difficult, particularly in the civil service, and we've effectively been proving ourselves stage by stage as we've been going. So it's not been appropriate to try and recruit a full internal development team, certainly not at the start of the project. So instead, we've supplemented this by bringing in the right team at the right point in the project. We've supplemented our internal skills by bringing in multidisciplinary teams rather than, for example, lots of individual contractors. And this has worked at both a strategy and platform delivery level, where we've set out to work in partnership with others. For instance, we worked with Public Digital to help expand and refine our strategy and bring in knowledge about platform delivery from governments all over the world. And as you'll be hearing, working with Scott Logic has meant being able to forge a partnership that allows us to balance the right technical and design skills and expertise in delivering a working enterprise platform. In breaking it all down, one of the big challenges in our approach has been how we procure in an agile way, how we bring in teams at the correct point in time without slowing down the project or stalling it with mountains of bureaucracy, or losing momentum between different agile phases. Arguably, we could have gone down a route at the very start to purchase a team to see us through from discovery to live. But it's a critical point to say that in the beginning, we wouldn't have known what to buy, how to size it, how to prioritize it. With each agile phase, we've learned so much and honed delivery based on it. And really importantly, we've refined our business case as we've gone along. So compromising these occasional gaps and additional administration has been well worth it. I think one of the reasons that government has ended up with big monolithic systems is grounded in what seems like big monolithic procurement processes. I've been really lucky to have worked closely with Scottish Government's Digital Commercial Service to help figure out the best way of buying and what we've needed to keep the project flowing. And finally, embracing agile governance. One of the principles we've embedded since the project began is to try and make our governance processes mirror the delivery on the ground. So that's meant short, frequent meetings, initially half an hour every 2 to 3 weeks with the programme board we have within the organisation. So that's meant relying on snappier updates rather than reams and reams of documentation. We've tried to demonstrate working software at our board meetings rather than just talking about it. I've witnessed other governance processes within government where boards are asked to comment on or sign off a business case. And often the first thing they're seeing is pretty much the finished article. So we've endeavoured to break down elements of our business case into their constituent parts along the way. And this has helped us to get a steer from our programme board and then refine on that basis. Meaning that by the time we're asking for sign off, main elements are already familiar to people. As I mentioned previously, one of the more unusual steps we took with the project was to develop a technical proof of concept while we were still in a discovery phase. A discovery phase would normally be focused on user research and sizing up opportunities and constraints, which we did as well. Quite specifically, though, it's not about starting to build the service. However, it was really critical in terms of our project success as it allowed us to test and prove a technical approach that until then had been quite theoretical. This meant we were able to state with confidence, particularly when it came to our business case, that we could stand up a service based on loosely coupled architecture and cloud-based services, that we could integrate with other organizations' technical stacks with minimal disruption, and we were able to perform a penny test and actually make a payment into a bank account. So we're simulating a full end-to-end service. All of these points proved vital when it came to articulating a technical direction and when it came to fully specifying the next stage along the way. It meant that we were actually demonstrating by doing, which helped build confidence and credibility. Sustaining that approach has been harder. In a certain sense, we were experimenting in those early days, and there's been a relative amount of freedom and flexibility in that. As the project has progressed, user needs have been honed, requirements have got tighter, budgets are larger, and expectations are greater. Therefore, the risk increases overall. One of the balancing acts when you're running and scaling an agile project is to make sure you're not trading off the need to retain that flexibility and constant refinement with the pressure to deliver a specific set of outcomes. And also when it comes to scaling, there's the need to ensure that in terms of decision-making and product direction, you're always looking at getting the optimum balance of skills and knowledge within the team. But the more people you add can make it harder to put controls in place and maintain a single version of the truth, a vision that everyone aligns to. And I would say that's a particular challenge with the way all of us are working right now. when it's difficult to sustain that informal knowledge sharing that's a natural part of office life. You can't easily gather people around for 10 minutes to reach a consensus. So it's even more critical to get the right tools that align to enterprise standards and pace, and always be looking at team structure and how to ensure the continuity of knowledge and of project vision. So in conclusion for my slides, as with any good agile project, we're iterating how we do things and improving all the time. But recognizing that there are pros and cons with every approach is essential. As I've said, the way in which we've tackled delivery of the payments platform has not always been the most straightforward path. So in terms of cons, smaller and more frequent procurement exercises are admin heavy, and we've had to run the risk of having to change suppliers between different phases, which would have meant modifying our approach or potentially changing the approach wholesale. We're reliant internally on ensuring we have sufficient skills for things like agile across multiple teams and cloud skills to give direction and retain ownership of the transformation we're leading. And we're managing different levels of agile maturity across different stakeholder organizations we work with. Everyone is traveling at their own speed, so you need to adjust to that, but not compromise delivery. But these areas are more than outweighed by the pros of working the way we have been. With the approach we've taken, we've been able to evaluate at each stage and retain the ability to pivot or change emphasis if it's become necessary. We've been able to bring in the right sized, right shaped teams, so it means we've stayed nimble, but this has also allowed smaller suppliers to compete. And as I've said, it's meant we've been able to retain that ownership of user experience, of technical direction and platform oversight without feeling we're just bit players in someone else's product vision. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Richard. Thank you.
Let me just take control. Okay. So thank you, Hugh. Good morning, everyone. Let me just get my screen sorted. Right, we're good. So a successful project delivery has to work for both client and supplier. So what's Scott Logic's take on our agile payments platform experience? I'm going to share with you some of the practical ways we've found to sustain agile productivity and progress on this project. For professional services companies like Scott Logic, providing the right team at the right time is a continuous challenge. Each new agile project typically brings a new team together for the first time. Therefore, providing the perfect team from the start is pretty difficult. Challenges can be varied. It's very rare that a client or a project are ready for everyone to start exactly when they say or believe they are. Our team members move between projects over time, and there's no guarantee that individuals who were available when a bid was put together and submitted are still available at contract start. For payments, we manage the problem by creating opportunities to introduce the right team members at the right time. So we start with a small senior team and gradually ramp up and fill in the other roles around them. We've targeted a sustainable mix of experience in our teams based on the needs of each phase. So we've included more senior team members on the shorter discovery, prototype and alpha phases, as they couldn't really accommodate more junior team members to the same degree as a longer beta can, while still delivering sufficient value. We favor multi-skilled team members who can fulfill different roles. So for example, developers with DevOps and test skills, or testers with development skills. And doing this allows the project to ebb and flow at a sprint level without disrupting or needing to change the team. We aim to keep knowledge flowing, not just sharing, but flowing. During all phases, we have kept the Scottish Government as close as possible to our delivery team through co-location, sharing knowledge in person, and by collaborating in Scottish Government tooling and repositories, things like Confluence and Jira. And that helps to avoid knowledge silos forming. We've also managed to keep 2 to 3 key team members across each phase, which has really helped with knowledge continuity and consistency. And we use sprint ceremonies as key knowledge sharing tools. Our sprint reviews cover more than just the built software. We jointly share architecture updates, latest status on third-party engagement, progress on delivery improvements. There's nothing kind of off the table. And we're not afraid to schedule additional knowledge sharing sessions to cover specific topics if there's a need across our teams to focus on those. And for a multi-year program like payments, fatigue can occur. We want to sustain team energy and focus. We also want to offer individuals opportunities to keep learning and growing. So we review team structure on a regular basis. We plan to rotate team members, bringing in fresh stimulus or offering new experiences within the project where appropriate. And given COVID and the need for remote working so far on the beta phase, we've also looked at team effectiveness and well-being. So we've introduced an initiative to empower the Scott Logic team to agree team behaviours that support individual circumstances and expected team values. And doing that has helped the team to find a way of working that enables everyone to contribute effectively whilst protecting their well-being and ultimately underpinning their personal enjoyment and satisfaction. Our experience on payments has highlighted the real value of having an effective sprint zero, or that initiation period at the start of the phase when everyone's getting organized. As Hugh mentioned, there were gaps between prototype and alpha phases and alpha and beta phases. During these periods, Scottish Government were progressing the project and procuring the next phase, and Scott Logic were competing to win the next phase. So each time we were re-engaged, our Sprint Zero became a tiny discovery. We used it to get answers to questions like, how have Scottish Government goals and priorities changed in the meantime? What additional research have they undertaken and what has that concluded? And in return, Sprint Zero was used by us to walk the Scottish Government team through our proposal. By doing so, we could explain any assumptions on the delivery shape, we could share views on risks, surface any differences, and establish a common understanding early in the project. We also used the time to understand the drivers and compelling events that are shaping the Scottish Government plans, and therefore the team behaviours and those of their stakeholders. So we've been able to understand where and why their team will feel pressure and be prepared to help avoid that becoming a problem. During Sprint Zero, and indeed throughout delivery, we share our expected dependencies, ensuring there's time to spot issues and address them. For a platform project, there's many dependencies within Scottish Government, within the technology ecosystem, with customers onboarding to the platform, and with third parties, for example, accreditors. And these all influence plans and the solution in different ways and at different times. So the earlier and better we understand what's going to pull the project in different ways, the more easily we can manage them successfully. We also use Sprint Zero to get to know each other's teams. That's been especially important where teams are not co-located all the time and under the current COVID lockdown. So we found ourselves possibly overpopulating initial meetings to help introduce everyone before scaling back to required attendees. As the development partner on payments, we see actions and problems naturally from a technology perspective. Scottish Government naturally see the demands and issues of government, of their stakeholders, and consider the full end-to-end service. And we both bring some knowledge within the payments domain. So to establish trust between us, it's been key to acknowledge our respective roles and areas of expertise. We've needed to listen to each other's experts and allow each other to contribute where we can do so most successfully. As an example, during the alpha phase, Scottish Government needed to demonstrate that the platform could support the BACS payments format and service. By achieving achieving connectivity to a BACS service in the alpha timeframes was problematic due to the integrations and complexities around the timeframes involved. Now, Scottish Government could have insisted we pursue that approach, imposing their views on how it should be done and presenting real delivery challenges for us. But instead, there was sufficient trust and space for us to discuss and suggest methods from our wider experience of banking APIs. We could avoid these problems and still demonstrate the required value by simulating the BACS interface and address that problem that we'd otherwise face. And it works both ways. We look to Scottish Government to manage payments within their wider strategic plans and to set the pace for adherence with things like the Digital Scotland Service Standard. In our eagerness to perform our role and get implementing and building things, we could risk pressuring Scottish Government into accepting technical solutions that only have to be reworked later or fail to satisfy. But because we acknowledge the influence of those factors on Scottish Government decisions, we make space in our plans and our delivery cadence to accommodate those activities. Momentum, time, and goodwill can be lost through debate over basic decisions and rigid adherence to theory rather than practical interpretation. We've made sure our team and the Scottish Government team are considered as one team, not two separate teams. We only overlap at points of governance, empowering both our teams to recognise the value from outcomes. So being pragmatic when it comes to addressing problems and decisions helps everyone. We are both prepared to compromise, and we're willing and able to consider alternative approaches. For example, early in beta, we found ourselves spending too much time on calls. We were suffering from meeting fatigue, and context switching was impacting productivity. So we challenged ourselves and shortened ceremonies. We focused on essential attendees, and we adjusted scheduling, improving that productivity without any drama, but just pragmatically addressing it. It's also been important to know when to aim for perfection versus when a pragmatic approach offers something good enough. During alpha, we didn't do any formal testing or spend much effort writing tests. Why? Well, it wasn't required to achieve the alpha goals. Alpha wasn't being rolled out to users, so quality in that traditional sense wasn't of importance. The required value and our focus was to reliably demonstrate a happy path through a simple payment journey, and as long as that was robust and resilient, that was good enough. For projects like payments delivered over multiple years, we worry about losing sight of the goals and expectations of the goals, and of expectations drifting over time. Team personnel change over phases, time erodes memory of what lay behind those good ideas and important decisions, and recollection of those things we didn't quite have time to get to can get lost. We also need to remember that with Agile, there's no guarantee that we will meet all goals that we originally set out to deliver. We may end up achieving goals that deliver the required value, but the timing or the nature of them is different to what we originally intended. So we try hard on payments to remember we don't have perfect vision to be able to view the whole journey. Instead, we can continually consider if we're on the right trajectory and if those eventual goals remain valid. So we avoid setting any goals that require huge leaps of faith, and we prefer to break them down into achievable steps using different methods. We maintain a balance of program and project horizon goals against which success is ultimately measured, with those that are within reach of the team and that drive our immediate behaviors. So within the current beta phase, we set a mission for every quarter. We then break that mission down into themes for each sprint. And by doing so, it reduces risk, but it also maintains, very importantly, a sense of purpose and value in our day-to-day actions. Being able to celebrate achievement of these goals, however small, also helps to support team morale. During the prototype phase, we made sure goals were achievable by separating them on the calendar. Original plans delivered both a prototype and a supporting business case, at the same time, but that was stretching team members in the wrong way. So we adjusted the schedule to stagger the delivery within the prototype timeframes and keep those achievable. Very simple measures, but it made it all the more possible. And during prototype and alpha, we focused on achieving a working slice of the solution, literally spending a penny to demonstrate an end-to-end happy path. Having that simple goal kept everyone focused and avoided diluting effort into areas that offered limited value for alpha. To keep those goals in focus, we also make sure we revisit the why as information becomes available. We don't assume just because discovery or alpha phases have completed some research, that's it, job done. As concepts and designs progress, there's a need to revisit decisions and gaps in understanding, constructively challenging and encouraging validation from additional perspectives beyond those consulted previously. One way we support that in beta is we have a version of the alpha demonstrator, the output from our alpha phase, available to user researchers so they can continue to engage with users to explore further and to validate user needs more. From a technical perspective, it's been important that we have a common vision for what a platform is and how it may evolve over time. Different opinions between Scottish Government and Scott Logic could create tensions that waste time and result in an architecture and implementation that is satisfying no one. Importantly, we both understand that a platform strategy inherently evolves over time to deliver the required flexibility and scalability. New features and functionality are delivered over the course of the delivery phases. Not all concepts are recognizable in what is produced in prototype, alpha, or even beta timeframes, but they will appear as the platform evolves and grows. For payments, we support that platform evolution through several methods. We use strong, opinionated architectural concepts, patterns, and standards that carry through each phase, but they may evolve in terms of implementation. So, for example, we have a cloud-based approach, and in alpha, we made use of functions as a service. Efficiency was paramount at that time, and they provided a good solution for that part of the platform. However, because of security requirements for that component in beta, we need to move away from that architecture, and we're able to do so whilst preserving a direction because of our strong architectural concepts underpinning it. We've used each phase to explore complexity around technical areas and the steps required to address it. Prototype and alpha help to surface and understand how easy or not API interfaces and integration would be with third parties. Those integrations take time to understand capabilities, identify capability gaps, agree test approaches, support onboarding, and to sustain them with appropriate governance. So to date, we've deliberately not tried to build and demonstrate all interfaces given these factors, preferring instead to focus on 2 or 3 and use them to refine and improve an approach that can scale to accommodate others and components that we enhance with each phase. In all phases, we make effective use of short spikes within sprints to explore and experiment without impacting overall delivery momentum. Typically time-boxed exercises, these set out to answer a specific unknown and identify recommendations on the way ahead. So, for example, we may be determining the best way to automate our API tests, or we may be evaluating alternative orchestration frameworks where there's multiple options available to us. And as the platform evolves through each phase, we've made sure we capture our thoughts on what it does and what it doesn't do yet. So all those key moments of what did we just do? Or that's a good idea. Or we can address that later. We make sure those are not lost and we capture those so that we can revisit them and make sure we understand what we did and what we still need to do. A recognized benefit of agile iterations is how they offer opportunity to adjust to address problems and issues throughout a delivery. Now that's only effective if we share visibility of the problems so that we can jointly recognize and address them and celebrate them when we do succeed. So for payments, we make sure we share and collaborate on plans with each other. And by each other, I mean ScotLogic and Scottish Government. So not only does it avoid surprises, but it also supports and validates understanding. Importantly, it allows us both to ask for help from a shared position of knowledge. We can more readily empathize and determine how we are empowered to help. It's quite often, a solution involves both parties. It also builds trust, removing ambiguity, and supports clearer communication. We know that if Scottish Government challenges us on a point, it's either because we've not explained it very well, or they've not understood it and it's in our interests to address that, or we've overlooked it. It should never be because we've taken an action that Scottish Government had no knowledge of or disagreed with. Scottish Government don't treat our team output as a black box that we turn up with when we're ready. They can see what we're doing. If there is a problem and we solve it, they can see what that problem was, how we solved it, and understand how that impacted the project, or perhaps didn't if the problem was readily addressed. During prototype and alpha, co-location clearly helped with visibility. However, in these remote working times during beta, we've both worked hard to establish and maintain visibility via other means. More important than ever are shared tooling, joint sprint review sessions, and collaborative quarterly initiation and review sessions that all team members are invited to. Finally, we maintain effective relationships across the team to manage progress and problems where it's most effective to do so within the team structure. So for example, myself and Hugh are in contact every week. Our delivery managers are in daily contact, solution architects in weekly contact, and our user-centered design practitioners are engaged jointly on shared research. That makes it so much easier to address problems by having that visibility and that contact and that shared understanding at the right level. So I set out producing these slides, focusing on what our experience on payments had highlighted as key challenges and ways we have sustained Agile. And only when I was running through them in preparation for today did it dawn on me that actually a lot of the points that Hugh and I have covered reflect many of the principles of the Agile Manifesto, the basis for Agile delivery. So I think that's quite good that they've kind of come out by default rather than by design. The Agile Manifesto and Agile frameworks are there as a guide for each project to adopt and to fine-tune in a way that works for them. And in our experience, I think that's been core to our success in sustaining Agile for the payments platform. That's all I wanted to cover for today. Thank you all for listening. We hope it's been interesting and supports and informs some of your own experiences. And back to Claire.